There comes a moment in every person's life when you find yourself lost in the vastness of the universe, questioning whether your choices truly matter, whether the path you are walking holds any real meaning. It is in this moment of profound reflection that you encounter a universal truth. Life's greatest lessons do not come from self-help books or motivational speeches, but from the most unlikely journeys, from stories that touch our souls in unexpected ways. Imagine for a moment that you are sailing among the stars, carrying not only the weight of your own decisions, but also the responsibility to protect something greater than yourself. This is the essence of the Mandalorian journey, a saga that transcends science fiction to become a mirror of our own human existence. When Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, removes his helmet for the first time in decades to save Grogu, he is not merely breaking an ancient rule. He is teaching us that true love demands sacrifices our rational minds could never calculate. In that moment, you realize that your own life is an epic journey waiting to be discovered, filled with profound lessons that can completely transform your perspective on purpose, courage, and what it truly means to be alive in this vast cosmos. Welcome to a unique journey of self-discovery and wisdom. Today, we will explore together 15 revolutionary lessons drawn from the Mandalorian saga that have the power to radically transform the way you view your own existence. This is not just entertainment or science fiction analysis. We are talking about timeless teachings woven carefully into a narrative that resonates deeply with the most fundamental challenges of the human condition. Over the next few minutes, you will discover how Mandalorian philosophy can become a compass for your everyday life, offering clarity in moments of confusion, courage in the face of fear, and purpose amid chaos. Each lesson we share is not merely an abstract concept, but a practical tool you can apply immediately in your relationships, career, and personal journey. Prepare for a transformative experience that blends the ancient wisdom of the Mandalorian warriors with practical application in our modern reality. This is not a journey we undertake alone. We are all navigating the same stars, facing the same universal fears, and seeking the same sense of purpose that makes life truly meaningful. Lesson 1. The true warrior is not the one who never falls, but the one who rises each time he is knocked down. This wisdom emerges from the very essence of Mandalorian culture, a people who were scattered, persecuted, and nearly exterminated, yet never lost their core identity. Din Djarin exemplifies this truth as he repeatedly faces more powerful adversaries, impossible situations, and challenges that seem insurmountable. He does not win because he is invincible, but because he possesses something far more precious, the unwavering determination to keep fighting for what he believes is right. In your own life, you have likely experienced moments when everything seemed lost, when obstacles felt larger than your ability to overcome them. The Mandalorian lesson teaches us that those moments do not define your failure, but rather your opportunity to demonstrate what you're truly made of. Each time you rise after a fall, you forge your own inner armor, building a resilience that no external circumstance can break. This does not mean we should be stubborn or ignore when it's time to change strategy, but rather that we should never abandon our core values and the people we hold dear. True strength lies not in the absence of vulnerability, but in the capacity to remain whole even when tested beyond our apparent limits. Lesson 2. To protect does not mean to control, but to create space for the other to grow. Observing the relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu, we discover a revolutionary model of care. The Mandalorian does not try to shape Grogu in his own image or force him to follow exclusively the Mandalorian way. Instead, he recognizes that his responsibility is to create a safe environment where Grogu can discover his own nature and develop his unique gifts. This approach requires a mature wisdom that many of us struggle to develop in our relationships. How often do we attempt to protect those we love by making decisions for them, limiting their experiences, or imposing our own perspectives as absolute truths? True protection demands the courage to let go, to allow our loved ones to face their own battles and learn from their own experiences. This does not mean abandonment or neglect, but rather acknowledging that each person has their own destiny to fulfill and their own growth journey. When you learn to protect in this way, you offer the most valuable gift possible: trust in the other's ability to find their own path, and the reassurance that you will be there to support them when needed. Lesson 3. Sometimes we must break the rules that define us to honor the values that truly matter. When Din Djarin removes his helmet, he is not simply disobeying tradition. He is demonstrating that personal evolution sometimes requires us to question even the most fundamental beliefs that have shaped our identity. This lesson holds particular power in a world where we are constantly pressured to conform to external expectations, whether familiar, professional, or social. We often discover that the rules we follow our entire lives are no longer suitable for the person we have become or the circumstances we face. True growth demands the courage to critically examine our own convictions and be willing to evolve when necessary. This does not mean abandoning all our principles or traditions, but rather distinguishing between the rules that serve us and those that unnecessarily limit us. When you find yourself in a situation where your established beliefs clash with your deepest sense of right and wrong, that is your opportunity to demonstrate true integrity. Intelligent flexibility is not betrayal of your values. It is the natural evolution of a person committed to continuous growth and to doing what is genuinely right, even when it requires personal sacrifice. Lesson 4. True purpose is not something you find, but something you create through your daily choices. Din Djarin did not begin his journey with a grand plan to become a legendary protector or to reunite Grogu. He simply made one choice after another, guided by his core values and a growing sense of responsibility. Each decision he made, however small it seemed at the time, contributed to the building of a purpose that turned out to be greater than anything he could have consciously planned. This perspective is liberating because it removes the pressure of having to discover your life purpose as if it were a hidden treasure waiting to be found. Instead, you recognize that you are constructing your purpose each day through the choices you make, the people you choose to help, and the values you decide to honor. It doesn't have to be a monumental decision or a dramatic revelation. It can simply be the consistent choice to act with integrity, to treat others with compassion, and to remain true to your deepest principles. When you embrace this approach, you will find that your purpose emerges naturally from your actions and becomes a living force guiding your future decisions. Purpose is not a fixed destination, but a path you build as you walk. Lesson 5. Inner strength does not come from the absence of fear, but from the ability to do what is right despite fear. Watching Din Djarin in his most challenging battles, we realize he is not a warrior without fear, but someone who has learned to function effectively even when fear is present. This distinction is crucial because many of us mistakenly believe that courage means not feeling fear, when in fact it means feeling fear and choosing to act according to our values nonetheless. Fear is a natural and often necessary emotion that alerts us to real dangers and helps us take appropriate precautions. The problem arises when we allow fear to paralyze our ability to act, or when we completely avoid situations that require growth because they make us uncomfortable. True Mandalorian courage teaches us that we can acknowledge our fears, respect them as valuable information, and still choose the course of action aligned with our deepest values. This applies to every area of life, from difficult conversations we need to have with loved ones to career decisions that can change our trajectory. When you stop waiting for fear to disappear before you start acting, you discover you possess a much greater inner strength than you imagined. Courage is not a feeling. It is a conscious decision to do what is right, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Lesson 6. Who you are is determined not only by where you came from, but primarily by how you choose to live. The Mandalorian saga is full of characters who transcend their origins and redefine themselves through their actions. Din Djarin was not born a Mandalorian, but became one of the most honorable representatives of that culture through his consistent choices. Grogu is not defined solely by his connection to the Force, but also by his ability to form deep bonds and demonstrate compassion. This lesson is especially relevant in a world where we often feel limited by our personal history, socioeconomic background, or others' expectations of us. While our personal history is important and should be honored, it does not have to be a prison that determines our future. Each day offers the opportunity to choose who you want to be, regardless of who you were yesterday. This does not mean denying your history or pretending it doesn't matter, but rather acknowledging that you have the power to write the next chapters of your life consciously and intentionally. When you embrace this perspective, you free yourself from self-imposed limitations and excuses that may have hindered your growth. Your identity becomes something dynamic and evolving, shaped by the choices you make today and the person you decide to be tomorrow. This is one of the most empowering lessons of Mandalorian philosophy. You are not merely a product of your circumstances, but the architect of your own destiny. Lesson 7. The greatest sacrifices are not those we make out of obligation, but those we make out of love. When Din Djarin hands Grogu over to the Jedi, he is not simply fulfilling a mission, he is making the most painful sacrifice possible out of genuine love. He recognizes that keeping Grogu with him would be selfish, as it would prevent the child from reaching his true potential. This kind of sacrifice transcends the traditional notion of sacrifice as suffering or loss. It is an act of love so profound that it transforms pain into something sacred. In our own lives, we often face situations where we must choose between our immediate desires and the well-being of someone we love. It may be allowing an adult child to make their own decisions, even when we know they might fail. It may be supporting a partner's dream, even if it means difficult changes for us. It may be making career choices that benefit our team, even if they don't bring us personal recognition. Genuine sacrifice is not an act of destructive self-denial, but an expression of love that acknowledges we sometimes need to let go of something good to allow something even better to flourish. When you learn to distinguish between sacrifice out of love and sacrifice out of obligation or fear, you discover that the former, though painful, always results in growth and deeper, more authentic relationships. Lesson 8. The most powerful words are often those that need not be spoken. The relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu demonstrates how genuine communication transcends words. They understand each other through gestures, looks, and an emotional connection that goes beyond verbal language. This lesson is especially valuable in a world where we often confuse communication with word count or verbal eloquence. The deepest communication happens when we are truly present with another person, when we listen not only to their words, but to their unspoken feelings, fears, and hopes. This requires a quality of attention that has become rare in our era of constant distractions. When you learn to communicate this way, you will find your relationships become richer and more meaningful. You will begin to perceive the emotional needs of those around you, even when they cannot articulate them clearly. This does not mean words are unimportant, but rather that they are most powerful when supported by genuine presence, active listening, and real empathy. Mandalorian communication teaches us that sometimes the simplest gesture, a gentle touch, a look of understanding, or simply being there during a difficult moment can convey more love and support than 1,000 well-intentioned words. Lesson 9. A true leader is not one who commands, but one who serves and protects. Din Djarin never proclaims himself a leader, but his actions inspire others to follow him because he consistently demonstrates that he is willing to put the well-being of others above his own safety and convenience. This form of leadership is radically different from the authoritarian model many of us associate with power.
Mandalorian leadership is based on example, integrity, and a genuine commitment to the welfare of those you lead.
This applies not only to formal leadership positions, but to every situation where you have the opportunity to positively influence others, whether as a parent, colleague, friend, or community member. When you embrace this form of leadership, you discover that your influence becomes much deeper and more enduring. People are naturally drawn to those who demonstrate consistent character and genuine care for their well-being. True Mandalorian leadership does not require titles or positions of authority. It emerges naturally when you commit to being a person of integrity and use your influence to uplift others. It is about creating an environment where others can thrive and grow, not about accumulating power for yourself. Lesson 10. True strength is not in not breaking, but in how you rebuild after breaking. Mandalorian culture was literally fragmented, their worlds devastated, and their people scattered across the galaxy. Yet they preserved their essence and found ways to maintain their identity and values even under the harshest circumstances. This lesson is particularly relevant because we all face moments when we feel completely broken, whether by loss, failure, betrayal, or other traumatic experiences. Mandalorian wisdom teaches us that these moments are not the end of our story, but opportunities to discover who we truly are when everything else is stripped away. When you go through experiences that shake your foundations, you have the chance to rebuild your life in alignment with your deepest values. This does not mean we should seek suffering or be grateful for trauma, but rather that we can find meaning and growth even in the most difficult circumstances. Rebuilding after a deep break often results in a stronger, wiser version of ourselves. Like metal forged in fire, we emerge from these experiences with a resilience and clarity we did not possess before. The key is not to try to return to exactly who you were before, but to integrate the lessons learned into building a more resilient, authentic version of yourself. Lesson 11. True character is revealed not by perfection, but by how you handle your imperfections. Din Djarin makes mistakes throughout his journey, makes decisions that are not always the best, and faces the consequences of his choices. Yet he never uses his imperfections as an excuse to stop trying to do what is right. This lesson is especially important in a culture that often promotes the idea that we must be perfect or that our failures disqualify us from living with integrity. The reality is that we are all imperfect, and that imperfection is not a flaw to be hidden, but a natural part of the human experience that can be transformed into wisdom and compassion. When you accept your own imperfections without using them as an excuse for mediocrity, you free yourself from the paralyzing pressure to be perfect. This allows you to take calculated risks, learn from your mistakes, and continue growing without the constant fear of failure. Even more importantly, accepting your own imperfections makes you more compassionate toward the imperfections of others. You stop judging people for their flaws and begin to see them as complex human beings who, like you, are doing their best with the circumstances they face. This perspective transforms your relationships and creates space for more authentic, deeper connections. Lesson 12. True tradition is not the preservation of ashes, but the transmission of fire. Throughout the saga, we see how Din Djarin balances respect for Mandalorian tradition with the need to adapt to new circumstances and relationships. He does not abandon his culture's core values, but finds ways to express them in ways relevant to his current situation. This lesson is crucial in a constantly changing world where we often feel torn between honoring our heritage and embracing necessary evolution. Mandalorian wisdom teaches us that the most valuable traditions are those that carry universal principles which can be applied flexibly and creatively. When you understand that the essence of a tradition is not in its specific external forms, but in the values and wisdom it conveys, you free yourself to honor those traditions in ways authentic and relevant to your present life.
This applies not only to cultural or religious traditions, but also to family, professional, and personal traditions. The goal is not to preserve outdated forms that may no longer be useful, but to keep alive the spirit and wisdom that made those traditions valuable in the first place. When you embrace this perspective, you become an active guardian of wisdom, passing it on in ways that can positively impact future generations. Lesson 14. Your true strength does not come from your armor, but from your willingness to remove it when necessary. Mandalorian armor is a powerful symbol of protection and identity, but the most powerful moments in the saga occur when that armor is removed, literally or metaphorically. When Din Djarin removes his helmet, he is not becoming weaker, he is becoming braver, more vulnerable, and paradoxically, stronger. This lesson teaches us that while we all need psychological and emotional protections to navigate life's complexities, our true strength emerges when we have the courage to be vulnerable when the situation demands. Authentic vulnerability is not weakness, it is a form of courage that allows for deep connections and genuine growth.